those that were with us yesterday and the day before, honestly, I have to say that I'm very confused. Very, very much confused. Because I had the feeling that I was understanding everything in the moment that I was here. From 6 to 8, I was understanding everything that has been said. Then in the morning, I'm confused. And today I'm even more confused. I don't understand anymore. See? Because the first day someone said that there is no core for the self, that we are just storytelling, that we tell to ourselves constantly, and that we perceive the world and reconstruct the world inside our brain. Maybe we are hallucinating, maybe we are not hallucinating, but it's only about this neurons firing. And then the day after someone said, no, it's not happening this way. It's different. First of all, the word does not exist. And then second, I don't believe in neurology. I don't believe in those neurons. It's everything about the brain. There is only this brain, and we are just this stupid firing. I woke up this morning and said, I have another day, and tomorrow morning I will be even more confused. Yes, but see, every time we are in front of a doubt, we are also just one step behind an illumination. Right? We are in front of a doubt, but just one step before an illumination. And I like this sensation. So I hope at the end we will be even more confused. Now, tonight we will talk about imagination. This is something that I really know. And then we will talk about something that I don't know at all. War. I've known nothing. Only what I see in the television, cinema sometimes. My grandfather told me about the Second World War. He was charging bombs into airplanes, bombing cities or places far away from him. And I don't even know how much weight the bomb. I have no idea. Was he, with his hand, doing it? He had a machine? No idea. Are you crazy, Alex, talking about something you don't know? I like the challenge. But I'm not the one who's going to talk about it. See? That's why I invited other people to do it. Now I'm just going to ask you just one thing. Just one thing. I want you to use your imagination. Imagine that this is a road, or imagine that this is a desert of stone, or a countryside. And I am the first man on the planet, or maybe the second one. And then I'm walking, and at a certain moment, I do something really strange. I pick up the ground in which I'm walking. It's difficult to imagine, right? But don't worry, I have this. It's a little stone. Is it easier? Okay. Put the little stone in here. I do my walking. And at a certain moment, for the first time, I pick up the ground in which I'm walking. Now, if we just stay silent, it's going to make a sound. Wonderful. Wonderful. Huh? And after something like this is the intellectual death for 40,000 years. Now, when a man or woman, or a human being, or any other animals maybe, pick up the ground in which was walking, then you're facing with two options, sometimes, or three. The first option is take the stone and throw it there to the rabbit, passing by. You and you have your dinner. Right? Good. First option. It's not very interesting, because this is what we have been doing all the time, trying to be there where we are not yet. The project is understanding. I want to be there. I'm not yet there. I'll be there. A drone, a telephone. It's understandable. Then you have another option. You have the stone in your hand, and you just look at it. And then you walk to someone else and say, it's not beautiful. It's not beautiful. It's beautiful, right? What are you talking about? It's not really. But this is the other option. Maybe you have another, maybe you have a third one. It's the same thing with a stick of wood and a string. See, with a long stick of wood and a string, you can make an harp or a bow. War or art? And tonight we're going to talk about war in a chapter of art. It's interesting. Interesting. Yes. So tonight we're going to, first of all, try to understand war. And Dunya, Mikhail, is here to tell us that war works hard, really hard. And there are too many bows and not enough arts. There are too many bows and not enough arts, see? We need more poets, we need more artists, less bows. Even if when I was a kid, I was doing archery. I was an archer. I was small. And there's something beautiful that Dunya wrote about the war. She's asking, what is it for? And she said, what is it for? To give back to your mother on the occasion of death a handful of bones she had given to you on the occasion of birth. And then I would like to understand what is the relationship between the bow and the harp. What is the relationship between war and art? That's why I invited Agnès de Victor, because she's trying to understand this. She's trying to understand how the cinema, how movies images, how moving images, how the cinema dealt with the war. She specialized on a precise period of war, Iran-Iraq in 1994. So she will talk about that specific moment, but I think it's a more large allegory or metaphor. We can use it for understanding other wars, maybe. And then the other thing that I'm interested in is trying to do this experience of war, not through a screen, not through a screen, but through a story that is embodied. Someone that really embodied the experience of war. So we have Brian Tarry, which served 7 years as an American soldier in the Iraqi war, and Bosnia as the governor also. Yeah. Yes. 2 amazing poets with many awards, many books. But for the first time, instead of reading the page, we have also the body. I think this is really important. It's a little bit like the story. It's hard to see it. And then, of course, Agnès de Victor, she's doing something that I really have no idea, because this is the risk of being an artist. It's like saying something to justify something else. Even if you believe it, who is manipulating who? Maybe no one is manipulated. So now I'm gonna just leave you to these 3 amazing people. First of all, Dunya, then Agnès, and then Brian. And then at the end we will have a conversation. very happy you're here, and I hope you will enjoy this book. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bonsoir, I learned today, and yeah, thank you for coming. I'm so excited to be in Paris, and it's short time. I think I should come. I will come again because it's so beautiful, and this chapel is very beautiful. The stone made of is great. I will start with reading this poem. Larsa. Larsa is my daughter, and we named her after the goddess of sun. It's a name. Mesopotamian name. It's a goddess. And this will be with background will be a music and a chorus of Suzy Ibarra. She lives in New York. And also she used the music of Nasir Shamma, who is an Iraqi oud player. And he's also my friend. As if the world's last egg were about to fall from me into the ground. That's how it moved with you inside me. That's how I move with you inside me. As if you were drawing shapes on the way to growing up. The circle's the woman who swallowed the globe. The rectangle, a moving bed. The triangle, the doctor's face. The square, a clock heedless of appointments. As if you were a new prophet, lisping and sending signs to all creation, so that I forget my enemies. They melt together like gentle snow. I write your name with chalk, mixing the sun letters with the moon letters. Lullabies at night to bring good news, questions about the Exodus and what came after, visions revealing the simple pleasure of paper boats, the secret spot where we stowed the umbilical cord and answers from the rattle. We divide the world into bread or rain or a code too big for us. And we are confused because although we shake our wings, we do not fly. You yawn, so I harvest stars from your sleep and stick them in the notebook. May they bring you joy when I'm not here. You start walking and follow the moon while I follow you. Behind us, the mirage of a country you were not born in. You wave your hand, and I know you are mixing rivers and lakes and continents with a teaspoon or a straw. You bear the Euphrates and Atlantic together to school. You spray colors, dark and light, at temperatures high and low, and all sides make peace, because you, Larsa, are beautiful. And like snowballs rolling to a halt, the countries for a moment stop fighting, because you, Larsa, are beautiful. You open your arms, and I know just how much I love you. I love you from here to Baghdad. I love you more than all the words. I love you higher than the smoke in the city. I love you louder than the explosions. I love you deeper than the wounds, Iraqi and American, from a bomb. I love you sweeter than a lily unfolding in the morning. I love you warmer than a nest that lacks only birdsong and a single piece of straw. I love you wider than the fear that brims in a time of war, coming and going from here to Baghdad. I love you. Maybe we can put the chorus, so I bring my eyeglasses, forgot them.
Dunya, I think there's a problem with the screen. There is no internet here.
Okay. No, it's not on the internet. No problem. Then we'll have this, what's called tablets, the poem of tablets. And the tablets poem is segments, short pieces that are inspired by the ancient Mesopotamian tablets. You know, the first communication in history was was through writing on the tablets by the Sumerians, my ancestors. And I was always fascinated by how this communication started with images. So it was metaphorical. It was metaphorical in a way that, that's how it referred to metaphor of something rather than naming the thing itself. So it was by default poetical, and gradually when the language developed, started to lose its poetical feature. So that I trying to go back to that. But what I did here is that I don't know how to draw. I'm the worst person in the world, and that helped because this image is supposed to be primitive. So this is Arabic writing. So the writing is the poem written in Arabic. So I wrote it with handwriting, but with some symbol of imitation of the tablets. How, if I were Sumerian that time, how would I maybe communicate this poem, short poem? That's how would I do it. So, and then the translation I will read in English while you see that image. She pressed her ear against the shell. She wanted to hear everything he never told her. Whenever you throw stones into the sea, it sends ripples through me. My heart's quite small. That's why it fills so quickly. Water needs no words to mix with water and fill up spaces. The tree doesn't ask why it's not moving to some other forest, nor any other pointless questions. He watches TV while she holds a novel. On the novel's cover, there's a man watching TV and a woman holding a novel. On the first morning of the new year, all of us will look up at the same sun. He was not with the husbands who were lost and then found. He did not come with the prisoners of war, nor with the kite that took her in her dream to some other place, while she stood before the camera to have her smile glued into the passport. Rapunzel's hair, stretched from the window to the earth, is how we wait. The shadows the prisoners left on the wall surrounded the jailer and cast light on his loneliness. Homeland, I'm not your mother, so why do you weep in my lap like this every time something hurts you? Never mind this bird. It comes every day and stops at the branch's edge to sing for an hour or two. That's all it does. Nothing makes it happier. House keys, identity cards, faded pictures among the bones, all of these are scattered in a single mass grave. The Arabic language loves long sentences and long wars. It loves never-ending songs and late nights and weeping over ruins. It loves working for a long life and a long death. Far away from home, that's all that changed in us. Cinderella left her slipper in Iraq, along with the smell of cardamom wafting from the teapot and that huge flower, its mouth gaping like death. Instant messages ignite revolutions. They spark new lives, waiting for a country to download, a land that's little more than a handful of dust. When faced with these words, there are no results that match your search. The dog's excitement when it brings its owner the stick is the moment the letter is opened. We cross borders lightly, like clouds. Nothing carries us. But as we move on, we carry rain and an accent and a memory of another place. How thrilling to appear in his eyes. She can't understand what he's saying. She's too busy chewing his voice. She looks at the mouth she'll never kiss, at the shoulder she'll never cry on, at the hand she'll never hold, and at the ground where their shadows meet. Also, I will read just a couple more poems. One, I hear you say science meets poetry, and so I thought of this poem I have is a love poem, but written in geometry, geometrical theorem. So it's here geometry also meets love. The Theory of Absence is the title. The hypothesis: I am tense, and so are you. We neither meet nor separate. The desired result: we meet in the absence. The proof: as tension turns people into arcs, we are two arcs. We neither meet nor separate. The hypothesis. So we must be parallel. If two parallel lines are bisected by a third line, in this case the line of tension, their corresponding angles must be equal, a geometrical theorem. So we are congruent, because shapes are congruent when their angles are equal, and we form a circle, since the sum of two congruent arcs is a circle. Therefore, we meet in the absence, since the circumference of a circle is the sum of contiguous points, which can each be considered a point of contact. So, okay, after proving that we meet in the absence, I'm gonna end with the poem, The War Works Hard. I read just a few lines in Arabic for the flavor of the language, and then I'll switch to the translation. And I thank two translators so far that are helping me, Elizabeth Winslow and Karim James Abu Zaid. كم هي مجدة الحرب ونشطة وبارعة منذ الصباح الباكر توقظ صفارات الإنذار تبعث سيارات إسعاف إلى مختلف الأمكنة تؤرجح جثثا في الهواء تزحلق نقالات إلى الجرحى تستدعي مطرا من عيون الأمهات. The war works hard. How magnificent the war is, how eager and efficient. Early in the morning, it wakes up the sirens and dispatches ambulances to various places, swings corpses through the air, rolls stretchers to the wounded, summons rain from the eyes of mothers, digs into the earth, dislodging many things from under the ruins. Some are lifeless and glistening, others are pale and still throbbing. It produces the most questions in the minds of children, entertains the gods by shooting fireworks and missiles into the sky, sows mines in the fields and reaps punctures and blisters, urges families to immigrate, stands beside the clergymen as they curse the devil. Poor devil, he remains with one hand in the searing fire. The war continues working day and night. It inspires tyrants to deliver long speeches, awards medals to generals, and themes to poets. It contributes to the industry of artificial limbs, provides food for flies, adds pages to the history books, achieves equality between killer and killed, teaches lovers to write letters, accustoms young women to waiting, fills the newspapers with articles and pictures, builds new houses for the orphans, invigorates the coffin makers, gives grave diggers a pat on the back, and paints a smile on the leader's face. The war works with unparalleled diligence, yet no one gives it a word of praise. Merci, thank you.
How are you guys doing tonight? Doing all right? Call it leaves and rain. I was walking through the middle of my life, walking down Divisadero Street, wearing old desert combat fatigues, listening to the antifreeze boil over. I was listening to the antifreeze boil over in conversations on the street, that dead-end steaming hiss of radiators run 100,000 miles and more. The radiators boiled over in fatigue while I was walking 100,000 miles down Divisadero Street in Fresno, my hometown. And it was July, and the asphalt was speaking its vapor, and I was wearing combat boots and walking through the middle of my life. I was listening to war. I was listening to war on Divisadero Street and learning how to ride low through the rest of my life, learning how to walk the blocks in tighter circles, the way the lost do. In tighter circles, I was lost to the war on Divisadero Street. I was circling the war, the way vapor curls from the steaming hiss of dead radiators in Fresno. I was circling the lost in Fresno, wearing my combat boots worn down 100,000 miles and counting. And I was counting. I counted each dying face passing by. I counted the birds with their exhausted voices. I counted the sentinel birds perched silent in the eucalyptus trees above. I circled the eucalyptus birds and listened for their medicine, the way the lost do in Fresno, wearing combat boots and speaking in vapor. I was circling through the middle of my life, right there under the medicine birds, listening to the silence of the sentinel birds and waiting for them to boil over in steam. But that's not what medicine birds do. Medicine birds break open in orange and red. Medicine birds have eucalyptus leaves for feathers and bandage the air when they fly. Medicine birds fly through the windows in the head, impervious to glass. They are impervious to war and hiss and steam and vapor and combat and the circling lost. Medicine birds fly through the windows to land in our beds when we're dreaming our circling dream of Divisadero and Fresno with its lost and circling war. Medicine birds have eucalyptus wings, and when they fly in our beds, they transform themselves into leaves and rain and lovers. The lovers in our beds are eucalyptus birds flying medicine through the windows in our heads. The lovers in our medicine beds fly eucalyptus through the circling lost. The lovers in our beds bring medicine to our lips and call it eucalyptus, call it love, call it leaves and rain for our exhausted souls. It's very ominous with this gentleman behind me. I was thinking, it's difficult to imagine him laughing or smiling or the word joy coming from his lips. Is it difficult for you? Well, me too. This poem is for, many of my poems are about my time in the Iraq War from 2003 to 2004. Many of the poems are about the soldiers around me, but some of the poems are about the Iraqi people, and this is one of those poems. And it's called Muhammad Trains for the Beijing Olympics in 2008. And because he was a weightlifter, and he was in a weight class as an athlete, as a writer, I have 10 and 12 syllable lines like a weight class, if that makes sense. So, are you guys able to, am I speaking too fast or too slow or doing good? Okay, I'm just gonna sort of blast this poem out. but I have to admit it's a little difficult to read, but this is perfect. In the 69 kilogram weight class, the Bulgarian Boevsky is the world record holder. He cannot be beaten, at least not by Sawara Muhammad. Muhammad, at 26, has shoveled cement longer than he cares to remember. In Erbil, in Kurdish northern Iraq, he strains hard to lift a barbell with its heavy plates, round as the wheels of chariots. Then muscles give, and the wheels bounce in dust before him. No, he cannot defeat the Bulgarian. The problem is in lifting weight over distance. It isn't a matter of iron or of will. In Beijing, Boevsky's records will go unnoticed because Muhammad is training now to lift the city of Erbil with its people. His quadriceps and posterior chain straining, the muscles tremoring to lift the Euphrates and Tigris both, mountains of the north, deserts of the west, Basra, Karbala, Ramadi, Tikrit, Mosul. 3 decades of war and the constant suffering of millions. This is what he lives. And no matter what effort he makes, he will fail completely. And the people will love him for it. You know, there are millions of people in places like Iraq where war is taking place. And man, you know, we think of war and we think of this man. But that's usually not the face of war. Usually the face of war is a child or a mother or, you know, people wanting to stand in line to get vegetables for dinner. You know, how brave it must be to stand in line waiting for vegetables for dinner. We talk about courage. You know, so many times we make monuments to soldiers and veterans. There are many here in Paris. I am not against that idea, but there's a writer. Do you know Sebastian Junger? Or Sebastian Junger? He's a journalist who wrote a book called War, and there's a film called Restrepo that you might check out. He suggested in America that we should make a monument to all the civilians who have died in war, where most of the casualties are. I'm going to try to see if this will play. I'm not answering my email, trust me. I just, I'm going to read one more poem while this downloads. Maybe we're here. This poem I wanted to read tonight. I'm still working on this poem, but it's me trying to learn from Dunya's work. So I had you in mind. You'll hear, I think, some me stealing your work, you know, basically, but hopefully in the best way. So it's called 12 Roses for the Dead. The militia kick a soccer ball in the street. We've seen this all before, no? The young men, the graybeards, the rifles, heavy weapons, their stories, their laughter. Their shivering hands boiling coffee in a tin over a crude fire. The buildings no longer buildings. Landscapes of rubble given to howling when a storm comes in. The ceasefire will be announced soon. Even the children know the fighting will resume until the deadline. There is a vital rail line that must be captured or defended. Or is it a sympathetic town this time? Perhaps the industry along a river. We've seen this all before, no? Architects design new orphanages, new hospitals, maybe a mausoleum to be placed in the cemetery as a way to honor the dead. There is too much good work to be done. The lists of provocations and demands will be discussed by diplomatic teams in distant cities, flashbulbs ringing. Still, the militia oil the bolts and check their radios. They smoke their last cigarette and fall in line. It will take hours to march to the front, enough time to consider the smoke drifting over the treetops, the grim, dark grove of chestnuts marching silently toward the horizon before them, and the dead woman lying on the roadside as they pass by. She continues to be dead, perfecting the task, though not one soul stops or offers her the slightest bit of help. I hear me learning from you in that poem, I think. So perhaps this will work now. Is this what we're supposed to be doing tonight? This is me. I hope. When those notes are played in my country, they are always played at military funerals. When will there be, what song is there for the civilians in this world? And part of your question that we were brought here with is, where does war exist in the imagination? And the first poem I read, I was walking down the street in Fresno, my hometown, circling the war, thinking about the war. The war, I've come back, the person in the poem has come back from war and keeps circling the war inside, you know. So is war the moment it happens? Is it in the times after? And then part of the question, you know, Alex, is, before I came here, made me think, why pick up the stone and throw the stone? You know, one of the main principles in warfare is that very fact. In military language, we would call that standoff distance, right? Standoff distance. How far can I throw a rock, or how far can he throw a rock, or she throw a rock at me? Can I throw it farther than they can? You know? And I live in a country so wealthy that we can take drone aircraft, not even be in the aircraft, and fly over the curvature of the earth and go to countries far away, not learn their language, know nothing about them other than images on a map maybe, or a picture, and then drop bombs on them. And then, after their shift at work, walk out and go have dinner with their family. That's possible. You know, in the Iraq war that I was in, the very first bomber aircraft that flew, they flew from the center part of America. And they refueled en route to Iraq. And they went over many countries, over the ocean, over the curvature of the earth. And they dropped, I know the man who flew the lead stealth bomber. I've talked with him, and I've had lunch with him. And he dropped the first bomb. There were cruise missiles coming in from the Gulf and other places, but of the first airplanes to arrive, he was in the very first one, and he was the lead pilot, and he dropped a bomb that went in Baghdad through the top of the dome, the cupola dome of Saddam's palace, and blew up the palace. You know? And he went home, and he slept, and then he did it again, but he could see his family. How strange a world we live in, you know? Should I read maybe a passage or two more, and then? Okay. Are you guys doing okay? Is this, no? Okay. Okay. Because I think one of the things is, why pick up that stone? Why fly over the curvature of the earth and bomb someone, and then go back home and have dinner, and then do it again? You know? I don't have the answer for that, but this is talking about that. I said infantry because I didn't really know if I could do it, if I could take it, if it would break me down and chew me up and then continue to keep on chewing. I said infantry because I knew that here was a portion of what work is. Here was a portion of what they fed to the lions in the dust and name of Rome. I said infantry because my great-grandfather Carter was gassed during the Battle of Mouzargan in the fall of 1918, the bloodiest battle in American history. He was there in France during the First World War, and yet he still managed to crawl out through the ruined ground, the world wrung into a gear-toothed roar, canisters of gas hissing as they flew over, and he made it back home, though the war would drag him under a few short years later. I raised my hand and said the words, "I swear," because I would have been ashamed in the years to come if I hadn't, even if it didn't make sense, even if nobody I cared about ever thought about it, even if all the veterans in my family never said a word, or even if they did, saying, "It's cool, Brian, it doesn't mean a thing. Believe me, the uniform doesn't make the man." Because it would have meant that between me and the people I revered most, there were beaches and jungle foliage and Russian MiGs and snipers and artillery craters and midnights spent drifting on the Pacific under the Southern Cross. Between me and the people I revered most, there were explosions I couldn't hear, curses and shouting and laughter, engines thrumming, Hueys and Blackhawks lifting off from the grass to map the sand and earth in medevac flights that would deliver the wounded to gentle hands and latex gloves, surgeons calling for scalpels and sutures, and more blood type AB negative, while airmen on the flight line hosed bodily fluids from the decks and drank coffee when the day was done. I said, "I, Brian David Turner, do solemnly swear that I will support and defend, because of my grandfather's whiskey-tinged silence as he sat through the Indian Wars of 1970s television." I could go on like this. I think you get a sense of why, but there's one paragraph here that I think gets to this a bit. Right before this I say, usually the American military, not always, but usually, goes far away to very places that are new to the American psyche and consciousness. And then I say, this is part of the intoxication, part of the pathology of it all. This is part of what I was learning from early childhood on. That to journey into the wild spaces where profound questions are given a violent and inexorable response, that to travail through fire and return again, these are the experiences which determine the making of a man. To be a man, I would need to walk into the thunder and hail of a world stripped of its reason, just as others in my family had done before me. And if I were strong enough, and capable enough, and goddamn lucky enough, I might one day return clothed in an unshakable silence, back to the world, as they say. So it's interesting to me that this is not new. This is not a new idea for me to say. But one of the reasons that I saw in many of the soldiers to my left and right, the reason why they continued to fight, I said this too at one point. I would say it was because of my soldiers to my left and right. I didn't know what the mission was. I didn't know those things. But I saw in most of them the word shame. They didn't want to be embarrassed in front of each other if they said, "No, I can't do this." And they weren't strong enough to say, "No, this is wrong." And neither was I. Isn't that pathetic? Wars can be waged, lives taken, and the people care. The soldiers will say, you'll hear it in this country too, about talking about taking care of the soldier to the left and right. I can name them: Bosch, Fiorillo, Jakowski. I can say their names. Why can I not say the names of those whose houses I went into and whose country I was in? Why didn't I care about them as much as I cared about the people to my left and right? So, yeah. I hope some of these thoughts touch on your excellent conversation you've started here. And thank you so much for sharing this space up here. Yeah.
I was very much impressed about everything tonight.
and was really, really emotional. I don't know about them, but for me it was really emotional, the path that we have been through. Because even when, at a certain moment, we started to look at the war with more analytic, with an analytic perspective, still it was emotional. To hearing poems before, like an academic lecture, some sort of lecture that is more analytic, it really helped to get into your words. Usually at this moment I ask to the people here if they would like to ask any questions. And I always say that when it happens that I'm in their position, I always prefer stupid questions. I always prefer when people, they just let themselves go, right? And then they ask the first thing that pops up in their brain. I always like the most interesting questions. So if anyone has a question right now, otherwise if you have a question that you would like to ask to someone of you, to each other.
Is this okay? Can we ask a question to the audience first?
Of course, it's even better.
Is this on? I don't think so.
Is the microphone on?
Yeah. Can you guys hear me? I mean, you can hear me, but okay, that's better. I guess my question is France at war right now? So it's a very simple question, but I wonder. Or in a related question is, are you at war right now?
No one knows. No one knows if France is in war. Someone knows.
Yeah, I think she used it.
Who?
Maybe no? Sorry.
No one knows.
Well, I mean, it's a practical. I don't fully know because in the United States right now, I know that there are many sorties taking place. There are many sorties taking place with American jets fighting and providing air support, they call it. But basically, we are war bombing people, you know, under IS right now. But not once have I seen in American newspapers in the last 6 months or so a list of the sorties. Like normally when wars take place, journalists will pay attention and they'll report back home, oh, there were this many missions that we know of, for example. That's been a zero conversation in America. But this last 2 weeks, when Russia started and they opened bases and they started fighting alongside the Syrian government, American reporters were reporting on the number of sorties that the Russian military jets were doing. Why is they not doing both, you know? So I guess what I'm wondering is, do you know if there are French jets involved in bombing somewhere in the world? Does anyone know?
This is really interesting because it is exactly the metaphor of someone flying over the curvature of the planet and bombing and coming back home and not even remember what he did, not even knowing that France is involved. You ask a question, you don't know how to reply. But
It's an awkward laugh. I'm laughing because it's...
no, I understand, like that laugh. But I just would like, maybe it's a question that is not related to what we were discussing right now. But there is something that Brian wrote, and it's a specific moment of intimacy during the war, and it's related to a specific place that I really like a lot, and it's the shower. And then, and I would like to keep going, maybe just for 2 minutes more on this idea of someone going and bombing and coming back home. Why I choose infantry. He's coming back home and you have a shower. And that place of intimacy there, then I would like, maybe if you, Dunya, if you can also say something about that. And I would like if you just can introduce maybe a little bit about this shower.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of the scene exactly how it works inside the memoir.
Inside the memoir you're talking about
yeah,
lover, meeting their
there's
lover.
this moment where the speaker is in a shower, because in Iraq there were, on the bases, there are these like trailers, the large connexes, with several showers with just a simple curtain, and then they're next to each other. So there are many men showering, but they can't see each other. And then there's a similar one for the women doing the same thing. And the men inside the shower describe their touching themselves and pleasuring themselves, but it's very just sad. And I think, there's a loneliness to it, of them thinking of lovers back home. And so I think one of them, he puts his forehead against the plastic of the shell as the water is coming down. And he's thinking almost as if he's going through the wall into the apartment back home, where his lover is laying in bed, sleeping or waiting for him. Of course, it's impossible, this connection, but he's longing for it. Yeah. Does that help?
Yes, because I think it's very sad maybe, but sometimes it's absolutely necessary. This teleport shower, I call it.
Yeah,
It can be funny, but it's also really, really, really deep. You're teleporting, with imagination, it's related to this imagination.
I think that the imagination has doorways, and we find these doorways to connect different parts of our lives and different parts of try to reconnect to our humanity sometimes in the context of this conversation. But you wanted...
Yes, because this idea of the shower makes me think, with Dunya we had a conversation in the taxi before. And I said, I would like to ask to Brian why, as a poet, he decided to go to war.
Yeah,
why infantry?
Yeah.
And
he was saying, we will ask Brian.
And then I said, if I ask Brian, then I will ask you why you left.
Oh, yes, yeah. Well, I read the memoir of Brian, and this specifically, and this, you write this powerful image about the shower, and it has a lot of metaphors, in addition to what you said about imagination. Also, to me, it's like as if it's cleaning something, as if there's something dirty there to clean. Anyways, but a lot of things. But you asked me, why I left my country, and that was almost about 20 years ago when it was. I lived I opened my eyes to the Iraq-Iran war that Anis was talking about, and after that I had the first Gulf War and only missed the last one. I was working as a journalist for the Baghdad Observer, and I was already a poet published in media. And in media, they described me as a subversive poet. There were, I have a certain text diary of a wave outside the sea that raised some questions, and we had censorship in Iraq where there's a department where you are censored. And there was a passage to be removed, and I didn't remove it, and it was risky. I was not daring something or being courageous. I was just excited about my writing. That I know small text, I didn't want to make it shorter. I kept it there. I didn't know there would be consequences, but then I was asked and interrogated about what do you mean by this and that, and all back to the allegory and the metaphors. The metaphors, what they do to us. They can harm us, they can save us, and that. They were always, so I thought that, so the metaphors I used, it was a goddess, God, like Zeus was a god, made him like a leader, cruel, and making these wars and taking every time from the box one storm after the other, because it was called the storm, the war, and I was using that in a way. Anyway, so this person was asking me, and so the metaphors were a problem then for the censorship. And I needed to leave right away. And how did I leave? I can't leave right away there in a country like Iraq. That time, you have to have a lot of paperwork to be able to cross the border. We didn't have even airplanes to cross us through bus through to Jordan first. And I couldn't do that, but also metaphors saved me, poetry saved me. I had a friend, and I don't mean saved me in a metaphorical way, it really did. I had a friend who were to help me in the passport office to rush my situation. So what they did, they put in my passport that my profession is poet. So I still keep this Iraqi passport because it says my profession is poet. I don't know if anybody else has that profession in their passport. So I'm proud of it. But anyways, because of this, the officers in the border as a poet, you don't need leave of absence from anywhere. Nobody care where you belong. You don't belong to a certain office. You're a poet, so they don't say where's your paperwork. So I was able to leave, and poetry really saved my life through this. And I left because of poetry, but returned the favor. Poetry returned the favor to me. Yes, that's how I left. I can say a lot about how when the war started, but specifically to answer your question, yes, in Iraq we're not good in cinema. No, if Iraqis say they're actors, actresses, we are the worst. We have the worst actors. We're not cinema. In the Arab world is in Egypt. Iraq is not about cinema films. We are the worst in it, but we are good in Iraq is for poetry. So yes, you're right. And during that, it was a lot of, the interesting thing is that a new genre, as if it's a new genre during that time, was called the poetry of mobilization. And it was that poetry of mobilization, it's called that way, ash-sha'r al-ta'bawi, means poetry of mobilization, was required, poets were required to have that and to encourage, soldiers to go to war, and they were rewarded big awards, like they were given houses, cars, and all that for this, saying this poetry in public to encourage soldiers to go to fight Iran. And the other thing is that I still remember from what you're saying of this black and white thing, and depends on which side you are in to frame it's interesting, the frame of war which frame you put in there, because I remember a program in the TV, Iraqi TV, called Suwar min al-Ma'raka, means pictures or images from the war. And always in these programs, they were showing the Irani soldiers as being dead, killed, in that area, and as if Iraqis are just like superheroes or something. So as if they don't die or something, which is, not the reality. And it's actually, they are very similar. People, they have, same, all you see in that program, people in the battlefield, dead. Actually, you can't distinguish who's the Iraqi and who's the Iranian. You can't distinguish. They're even similar, our people similar. And their blood same, the same wounds, but they tell you they are all Irani, because they don't want to show this side is killed. So it is really, they put a frame and that. So it is, Iraq is really the country of poetry, but then there are these side effects of the politics that comes into it. And I have funny stories you can't maybe believe, but in quick, although I'm taking so much time on the expense, but the Minister of Information and Culture called us, the young poets, 10 of us, into a meeting, and he said, in a brief, I don't tell you everything he said, but it was funny. He told us, we as young poets, he said, we want to see why he called us for it. He said, this poetry you're writing does not serve our national interest. Why do you write about the turtle when you want to talk about the war? So that was the modern poetry is not interesting for the government. They want the poetry of mobilization. So same situation.
The heart was not playing the music of the poet.
But still, that we had. But in addition, that's not all to give you but we had the free verse movement started in Iraq and then spread to other countries. So we had all the modern things going on, the culture and the modern poetry, and it was all happening at the same time with the marches and with the mobilization, two different things happening many different things happening at the same time in Iraq. It's really, it's not all, but all that. The memories I have is not all sad memories. I have happy memories, sad memories, all the different memories that climb with each other as if they are taken from unrelated films, the way they come to mind. Strange.
Any questions? Can we go ahead? I just wanted to ask to Brian if, I guess you had any other question? I wanted to ask to Brian about, because you have been talking about people that are not soldiers, people that are not doing the war, people that are just queuing for a piece of bread, or people that are just walking down the street. And from what I remember of this book you wrote, my life as a foreign country, at some moment you described that the majority of the time the activity of a soldier is just to be sure that this car, it's not a car, what is the technical name of this?
Oh, the vehicle, the
Yes,
striker?
Yes. That those vehicles, they can run through the street without being stopped by any car, without being interrupted, without the driver being interrupted in the street. And the majority of the time is like stopping the other cars. And can you just tell us about it? Because I try to imagine it, but I need you to imagine it clearly.
Do you mean, so you're talking about when the striker, there was April of 2004, there were a lot of bridges and roadways in Iraq, especially Baghdad, were blown up. And so the American forces, coalition forces, they put engineer bridges over the some of the overpasses that were no longer usable. The people who placed the bombs on the overpasses, they put multiple bombs. So the large vehicle that we would be in, it was not safe for us to go over. But if I was an Iraqi person who lived in Baghdad and I have a small car, you can go through the holes in the roadway and you can still get to work. So it was very smart how it was done. So the Americans put these engineer bridges, massive bridges over them. And then on the rivers, they put pontoon bridges on the water and put tanks on each end. And then my unit was in Mosul in the northern part of the country. They formed a group of us and we moved south to Baghdad. And so for several months we lived north and south of the city, and every day our job was to protect large convoys of food and supplies. So there would be 80, maybe 90 of these 18-wheel trucks, the big freight trucks, and there'd be drivers from Kentucky or parts of America or from Turkey, and they wore little blue helmets and flak vests, and they would drive these big trucks. And then we, the soldiers, would be in between them with our vehicles. They're very large 19-ton vehicles. So a 19-ton vehicle, I mean like the soldier is up here somewhere, right? In the back, there's two of them up there. There's a ramp that comes down, and then there's a big cage around it. And then the front of the vehicle's over there. There's drivers up there, and there's a massive weapon system up there. So when it comes through the streets, it's very intimidating, And when we would drive during that time, we would drive as fast as we could through Baghdad, through mostly on the highways. But some of it is like Los Angeles or maybe parts of Paris, where the freeway systems overlap. So people would shoot at us from buildings and from building tops and from roadways. There would be bombs on the road. There were multiple complex ambushes set up. So when you would drive through, sometimes I didn't even know they had this. There were mortars that would come, they call them Airburst Mortars. So they don't blow up when they hit the ground like that, like a normal mortar. There's a timer, and it blows up above and shoots the shrapnel down, which they fired over us to try to get guys like me who were up in the hatch, up on the top of the vehicle, so that it would get us. And we would hear those rounds and we'd hide inside the vehicles and then get back up and try to drive through. But for the average Iraqi, this is where it was so difficult. There are many marketplaces in the city. So as these massive vehicles are coming through, we were under orders to just keep moving, So, just like here, someone's late for work and you think, oh, I can make it now, drive in. No, this big vehicle smashed through the car, and it would be one time, for example, my colleague, he was up in the hatch, and he saw the vehicle before us. It smashed through a car, but the car flipped on its side in a marketplace, and there was a man who was caught and trapped under it, and another man had been hit by the car and thrown back and hit the wall, And somehow in that accident, as we drove by, he looked to see the accident, and he saw one of the men, the top of his skull had come back like this, and the man took his skull and put it back onto his head, like that. And then we just kept going. We never stopped to see, are you okay? Get medical attention, or anything like that, just kept moving. At the same time, there were small children who would run out, Especially we knew one spot where they would run out and they would throw bricks and rocks, stones, like the stone. They would throw stones and also rebar, the metal that goes inside the. And for us, if you're going 35, 40 miles an hour and a stone hits your face, you can be changed for the rest of your life, you know, from that stone from the. When the children, you know, we were also worried about the children. I remember we heard over the radio, and this is something you'll never see in history reports or anything. We heard over the radio, the colonel said, "You are authorized to shoot children." Right? So I remember when we stopped, my squad leader, he came up to me and he said, he didn't want our soldiers to hear. He wanted to stay to the side because he knows this is an order if we have to, you know, if it's dangerous. And he said, "Brian, I can't shoot children. I've got 2 sons. I have 2 sons of my own. You know, like, how do I live with myself? And how do I raise my own children if I've killed somebody else's child?" So it was so dangerous for everybody in this whole situation. We can go back to the reasons and the political things like that, but I'm trying to give you some of the feeling on the ground and the moments that were on all sides. The children running out, the father who doesn't want to have to hurt the children, but the knowing that a Turkish cook, because one of the children through rebar went through the window of one of those big trucks and he was frightened, we think, and he turned his vehicle, but it's a massive vehicle, and it jackknifed, and the whole vehicle smashed on the side, and the glass cut his neck, and he died in about 90 seconds. So his family in Turkey, they mourn their dead, the person in their family, you know? And that was one of the children who ran out to throw it. And maybe now that child, if the child survived, maybe now they have to think, as they're probably in their 20s now, they have to think about that Turkish man that they killed. And they have to live with, so many webs of difficulty and trauma. We were talking about the standoff distance and like how far the rock, you throw the rock. Well, this is one of my problems with most films that I see about different wars, World War I or whatever, is from my experience, and even in training, if there was combat, you might see like maybe a flash or something, but like I never even saw a flash from the weapon firing. I remember one time, for example, an RPG fired, and I knew the RPG, and it hit the vehicle that I was in and knocked me down. And then I got back up, and then we were supposed to do what our training taught us, because you almost never saw the people you're shooting at, or they're shooting at you. You don't see them. You often don't even see the muzzle flash, the guns going off. So the training the way it's in the book is to shoot or to fire at known and suspected enemy targets. So like if there's a field and there's a tree, then you shoot on one side of the tree and shoot on the other. Pop, 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 pop. Because maybe the person's there. But you don't see them, they're so far away. The standoff distance, the throw of the rock, is beyond the visual eyesight. But imagine a film where you just see little flashes and you never see. I don't see this very often. It's starting a little bit in American cinema. I've seen a couple of things, but very unusual because normally, from my experience in films, the other is presented almost as a monster or as like a non-human, and so you have to see them but not recognize them. You know? Does that make sense?
Brian, another thing maybe that helps in your research, when you said why I should look for the men to the right and to the left and not in front of me, those people that are labeled as enemy, but you're wondering why not worry about them as well. So that's the same thing of unrecognizing. I mean, not the matter of we are similar, how we look. I mean, it's interesting because with the Iraq-Iran war, and even if they don't look similar, still you're wondering, why should I look for the right and left, not in this way? Same thing. So same thing when we stop recognizing this who's who, that's when we are accomplish our being a human, 100%. like our humanity. So it is this image of the question you're raising now, and also of this which frame, the frame from which side you're looking to see the other. So this the matter of the other in a maybe big O. That's then here I think the question is the other. And then I think at the beginning, the Alex, what he talked about, the stone, and even the rabbit is recognized as the other. I mean, even though it's not, it's the throwing the stone or looking to the right and left or looking. So it's the same, I think it's the same issue we are having touching this issue of what do I do with the stone? I think what we're talking about the same. Yes.
Something else?
I would just, Sadi, the poet Sadi, he said in translation, he said, it is a condition of wisdom in the archer to be patient, because when the arrow leaves the bow, it returns no more. That's something I think about sometimes. Does that make sense? It is a condition of wisdom in the archer to be patient, because when the arrow leaves the bow, it returns no more.
I would like to, because we have been talking about the stone and throwing the stone, so throwing a prototype and then the arrow, and I would like, if you would like to, Brian, to read us here about it. This is the stone right there.
Okay. I hope you guys are doing so.
Just to finish this, just the end of the travel of the stone.
If a body is what you want, then here is bone and gristle and flesh. Here is the clavicle snapped wish, the aorta's open valves, the leap thought makes at the synaptic gap. Here is the adrenaline rush you crave, that inexorable flight, that insane puncture into heat and blood. And I dare you to finish what you've started, because here, bullet, here is where I complete the word you bring hissing through the air. Here is where I moan the barrel's cold esophagus, triggering my tongue's explosives for the rifling I have inside of me. Each twist of the round spun deeper, because here, bullet, here is where the world ends every time.